If you have that baby, I'll shatter your family, the Millionaire CEO warned. But 5 years later, hey, beautiful souls, I'm your storyteller, James, and I want to give you the warmest welcome to our little corner of inspiration, emotion, and storytelling. Wherever you are right now, whether in your living room, your car, or winding down after a busy day, I'm so glad you're here with me. Before we dive into today's story, let's take a moment to center ourselves and send out a little prayer for peace, guidance, and love. Dear universe, God, or whatever higher power watches over us, we thank you for this beautiful day and this moment of connection. May our hearts be open to love, understanding, and joy. May we find courage in times of fear, strength in times of doubt, and hope in every challenge. Protect our souls, bless our dreams, and guide us toward the light in every story, in every life. Amen. If that prayer resonates with you, if your heart feels that warmth and protection, comment Amen below. I want to see all the beautiful souls joining me in this moment. Now, let's get ready, because the journey we're about to take together is full of emotion, suspense, love, and triumph. Stay with me, and I promise you'll never regret it. Samantha Reed had spent her entire life mastering control. In the heart of New York's glittering finance world, where fortunes were made and broken in the blink of an eye, she had learned early on that emotions were liabilities. Every morning she walked the marble corridors of Hawthorne and Company, her heels clicking a precise rhythm against the polished floors, a sound that had become as familiar to her as the rise and fall of the stock tickers on the screens above. She knew every formula, every client's preference, every whisper of insider knowledge, but she had never allowed herself to know her own heart. Her apartment, perched high above the city lights, was an oasis of order, not a cushion out of place, not a picture crooked on the wall. She lived by rules she created herself, a fortress of routine and precision. No one breached it. No one came close to seeing the woman beneath the impeccable suits and perfectly measured smiles. Samantha had learned the hard way that vulnerability invited disaster. She had loved once, long ago, and the memory of betrayal had left her vigilant, cautious, and unyielding. But that night at the grand charity gala in the opulent ballroom of the Waldorf, everything she had built around herself began to tremble. The room shimmered with crystal chandeliers, the clinking of champagne flutes mingling with laughter and soft classical music. High-powered financiers, socialites, and celebrities mingled effortlessly, their conversations a subtle war of influence and charm. And there, among them, was Lucas Hawthorne. He was impossible to ignore. Tall, with sharp features that carried both elegance and danger, his dark eyes seemed to absorb every detail, yet never gave away his own. There was a confidence in the way he moved, effortless and magnetic, that drew the attention of every woman in the room, but it wasn't their glances that held him. It was Samantha. The moment their eyes met across the crowded room, the air seemed to thicken. Every sound dulled, the clatter of glasses, the whispers of speculation, the soft strains of a string quartet. They all faded into a background hum. Lucas approached with a smile that was both charming and enigmatic, like he was aware of every secret she kept buried. "Samantha Reed," he said, his voice a deep, melodic drawl. "I've heard of your reputation." Her pulse quickened and she forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I hope it's a good reputation," she replied lightly, though the electricity in her chest told her it no longer belonged to her alone. They spoke for hours, words flowing easily, conversations slipping into personal territory without warning. Laughter came from places Samantha had thought were locked forever, and with it, a dangerous sense of connection. Lucas had a way of looking at her as if he could see the cracks beneath the armor she wore, the parts of herself she had spent years concealing, even from her reflection. Every brush of his hand, every accidental touch sent sparks shooting through her. Her rational mind screamed to retreat, to maintain the walls she had spent her life constructing, but her heart, her long-suppressed heart, murmured otherwise. This man, she realized, was unlike anyone she had ever known. He made her feel alive, exposed, and terrified all at once. Yet, beneath the charm there was a shadow. Whispers she had caught in passing began to curl in her mind like smoke. A name, a rumor, a hint of a connection to a past she thought buried. Could someone so perfect be dangerous? Could someone so compelling carry secrets that could unravel everything? Her instincts screamed caution, but curiosity and something more pushed her forward. As the gala reached its peak, the room suddenly shifted. A commotion near the entrance pulled attention in a dozen directions. Laughter turned to murmurs, murmurs to alarm. Samantha spun toward Lucas, wanting to grab him, to demand explanations. But he was gone, vanished, just like that. The space where he had stood seemed impossibly empty, the energy he carried leaving a void that made her chest ache. She searched frantically, weaving through clusters of guests, her heels clattering against the marble. Panic flickered like a candle in a storm. Every rational thought fled. Her mind repeated the same question over and over. Where did he go? Why did he leave without a word? And then her phone buzzed, one new message from an unknown number. Samantha's fingers shook as she opened it. "I never meant to hurt you, but I can't stop coming back." Her breath caught. Her heart thundered. Every instinct screamed both warning and temptation. Who was this? Lucas? Someone else entirely? And why did the words feel like both a promise and a threat? The gala's music seemed distant now, the chatter like waves crashing against the walls of her panic. Her pulse raced, her mind reeled, and the controlled, measured life she had cultivated felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She wanted answers. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to trust and to fight all at once. But most of all, she wanted to understand. Was this man, this Lucas Hawthorne, the salvation of her heart, or the beginning of its destruction? The city lights outside glittered through the grand windows of the ballroom, indifferent to her turmoil, indifferent to the storm brewing inside her chest. And as she stared at the mysterious message, Samantha realized one truth she could not ignore. Her life would never be the same again. A single thought echoed in her mind, relentless and unnerving. Some dangers were irresistible, and some hearts once touched could never be untouched. Her fingers hovered over the reply button. She could respond. She could ignore it. She could do nothing. But whatever choice she made, the night had already changed her. Forever. And then the ballroom erupted into chaos. A scream, sharp, piercing, inhuman, shattered the veneer of sophistication. Guests turned, panic flaring, champagne glasses toppling. Security shouted, rushing toward the disturbance. Samantha's eyes darted across the room, searching, heart hammering. And there he was. Or was he? A shadow slipping through the crowd, just out of reach. A glimpse of dark hair, the curve of a jaw, a presence that made her chest tighten. And then, as if swallowed by the night itself, it vanished. The gala was no longer a party. It was the start of something far more dangerous, far more intoxicating, and far more inevitable than Samantha could have imagined. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time shorter, more urgent. "You can't run from me. Not now. Not ever." Samantha's breath caught. Her pulse raced. Her carefully ordered world teetered on the edge of chaos, and she realized with a shiver she couldn't suppress that the storm had only just begun. Samantha's eyes scanned the crowd frantically, heart pounding, as a sudden realization struck her. Someone in the room was watching her, someone who knew far more than they should. And in that instant, she understood. The danger wasn't just Lucas. It was someone who wanted everything she had fought to protect. Samantha's phone buzzed insistently against the marble of her kitchen counter, the glow of the screen cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The words from the unknown number lingered in her mind, pulsing with an intensity she couldn't shake. I never meant to hurt you, but I can't stop coming back. Each letter felt like fire against her chest, igniting a storm of curiosity and caution. She pressed her lips together, trying to steady the tremor of anticipation and unease, but it was impossible. Her heart refused to obey reason. Her apartment was quiet, but the silence felt suffocating, heavy with the remnants of the gala. She traced the edge of her countertop with one finger, thinking back to that fleeting moment when Lucas's gaze had pierced through her armor. Handsome, commanding, yet carrying a vulnerability that unnerved her. Every detail of him, the subtle curve of his smile, the warmth in his eyes, the way he seemed to sense what she wasn't ready to reveal, haunted her. She couldn't tell if he was danger or salvation, and the uncertainty both terrified and thrilled her. By the time sunlight seeped through her blinds, Samantha had already been awake for hours, replaying every interaction, analyzing every word, every glance. Work was supposed to be her refuge, the place where she could bury emotion under numbers, charts, and meetings. But her desk, her sanctuary of control, felt suddenly fragile. Every email, every call, every spreadsheet blurred into insignificance as Lucas's words and presence lingered in her mind. She hadn't even realized she'd skipped breakfast. A soft knock echoed through her office door just as she tried to focus on quarterly projections. Her pulse leapt. Expecting a colleague, she opened the door only to see Lucas standing there, his presence filling the doorway as though he belonged there. She swallowed, her voice caught somewhere between irritation and disbelief. What are you doing here?" Her words were sharp, defensive, though her chest betrayed her with a rapid, uneven beat. Lucas's expression softened immediately, eyes shadowed with guilt and something deeper, regret, concern, longing. "Samantha," he began, voice low, measured, careful. "I didn't want to scare you. I needed to see you. I need you to understand why everything has been so complicated." His hands were empty, relaxed, but the tension in his stance betrayed the storm he carried inside. She stepped back, instinctively creating space, arms crossed over her chest, a shield she had spent years perfecting. "Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it," she said, voice tight, wary. "You show up in my life with secrets, shadows, and half-truths, and suddenly everything I've built feels unstable." Her gaze darted toward the street outside her window, needing an escape she couldn't take. Lucas took a careful step closer, slow, deliberate, not breaking her boundaries, but not retreating either. "I tried to protect you, Samantha. From people, from situations you shouldn't have to face alone." His voice carried urgency now, a tremor that mirrored the storm in her own chest. "I didn't want you involved, but it's too late for that. You're already in this, whether you realize it or not." Her mind raced. Protect her? From whom? And why? The words sounded sincere, almost desperate, but her instincts screamed caution. She had survived the high-stakes world of finance, the cutthroat demands of colleagues, the betrayal of friends. Yet this was different. Lucas wasn't a colleague. He wasn't a friend. He was a man wrapped in mystery, holding truths that could either save or destroy her. "Explain," she demanded, her voice a controlled whisper, almost fierce. "If you're going to step into my life like this, you owe me everything. No half-truths, no vague warnings. Everything. Now." Lucas's jaw tightened, a flash of frustration, perhaps with himself. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a slim leather folder, the edges worn, the kind of object that carried secrets. "I've tried to shield you from this," he said, placing it carefully on her desk. "Inside, you'll find pieces of your father's past, connections, accounts, letters, things you weren't meant to see yet, things people would kill to keep hidden." Samantha's fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Papers fell into place with crisp authority, yet the words felt like fire in her veins. She read fragments, financial transfers to untraceable accounts, family disputes, names she recognized and some she didn't, and hints of betrayals that reached into the very foundations of her life. Her father's past wasn't just complicated, it was a minefield, a web of greed, deception, and danger she had never imagined. "Why now?" she asked, looking up, searching his eyes for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. "Why are you telling me this? After all this time?" Lucas hesitated, a shadow crossing his face. "Because someone's trying to take it all from you, from your family's legacy, and they won't stop. I couldn't let that happen without warning you." His gaze flickered toward her, intensity softening into vulnerability. "And because you deserve the truth, even if it scares you." Her chest tightened. Truth. She had chased it all her life, numbers, contracts, data, but this truth was raw, dangerous, intimate. She realized she didn't just want the answers, she feared them, yet she craved them. Each revelation drew her closer to him, even as logic screamed to pull away. Hours passed as he spoke, revealing fragments of a dark feud, whispers of betrayals, and hints of hidden wealth that could either secure her future or destroy it. Samantha listened, absorbed, wary, heart hammering, mind spinning. Each story, each name, each revelation was another thread pulling her into his orbit. The attraction she had felt at the gala flared, a slow burn mingling with fear, with caution, with a dangerous desire to trust him. Lucas's presence was magnetic and frustrating all at once. He moved with a confidence that unnerved her, yet there was an honesty in his eyes she couldn't ignore. He wasn't simply flirting with danger, he was entangled in it, living it, breathing it, and now, unintentionally or not, dragging her into the storm with him. Samantha's instincts screamed. She wanted to run. She wanted to retreat to her controlled, structured life of financial certainty. But something deeper, something primal urged her forward. She wanted to know everything, every secret, every betrayal, every piece of the puzzle that had shaped her father's life and threatened hers. Yet, even as they talked, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Eyes unseen, hands unseen, a presence lurking at the edges of her carefully ordered life. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer. Every unexpected sound in the office made her heart skip. Danger had a new face now, and she couldn't tell if it was Lucas or the enemies he warned her about. The office lights flickered as the sun dipped below the city skyline, casting long shadows over her desk. Papers rustled in the folder as if whispering secrets to her alone. She realized that trusting Lucas, even a fraction, carried risk. The kind of risk that could shatter her carefully built world, or her heart. Lucas leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "I need you to understand. They won't stop. They'll come for everything you love, and for you. I can't fight them alone anymore." Samantha swallowed hard. The room felt suddenly colder, the air thick with unspoken threats. She wanted to hate him for the chaos he had pulled into her life. She wanted to turn away. Yet the pull of desire, the undeniable spark between them, made it impossible to ignore him. She rose abruptly, chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need time," she said, voice firm but laced with tension. "Time to think, to process. I can't let myself get dragged into this. Or into you." Lucas nodded, slow, understanding, but there was a flicker of pain, almost regret, in his eyes. He closed the folder gently, leaving it behind like a silent promise of answers yet to come. "I'll wait," he said softly, "but not forever." Samantha watched him leave, the click of the office door echoing long after he was gone. She sank into her chair, the folder open before her, and realized that her life had changed irreversibly. There was no going back. The quiet safety of routine, of control, of solitary independence had vanished in an instant. Her pulse raced, chest tight with the weight of uncertainty, desire, and fear. Questions multiplied, each one more dangerous than the last. Could she trust him? Should she? Was he her only ally or the most dangerous threat of all? Hours bled into the evening. Samantha stared at the city lights glittering beyond her office window, mind racing, heart aching, body tense. She tried to ground herself, reminding herself of her strength, of the control she had always wielded over her life. But even as she tried, the slow burn of attraction, the flicker of hope, and the shadow of danger pulled her toward the edge of something she couldn't yet define. The city around her was alive with noise and movement, yet inside her office the world felt suspended, poised on the brink of chaos and revelation. The unknown waited. Secrets waited. Lucas waited. And danger, silent and patient, prowled at the edges of her life. Her phone vibrated again, late into the night. A message, anonymous, chilling, precise. "You don't know the half of it. Be careful who you trust." Samantha's breath caught. Heart hammering, she stared at the words, her mind a whirlwind. Someone was watching. Someone was close. And yet she couldn't stop thinking of Lucas, his intensity, his promise, the fragments of truth he had offered. She felt drawn to him, repelled by him, terrified, and unable to resist the pull that had been set in motion the night before. She locked the office door, glanced at the folder one last time, and whispered to herself, "I can't run. Not anymore. I have to face this. Whoever they are." And as she reached for her coat, ready to leave, a soft, deliberate sound at her window froze her in place. A shadow moving just beyond the glass. The night had just begun. Samantha's apartment is ransacked while she's away, papers scattered, drawers emptied. The only item untouched, a photo of her father and Lucas together, smiling, their bond a haunting puzzle she can't yet decipher. Samantha's hands shook as she stared at the envelope, the thick paper heavy in her grasp, as if it carried the weight of her entire fractured life. The city outside her window continued its endless hum, indifferent to the storm raging within her heart. She had survived so much, betrayal, grief, threats, but nothing had prepared her for the shock of seeing Lucas's name written in elegant, precise script on the will that defined her father's final wishes. Her mind raced. How could he be tied to her father's fortune in such a formal, irrevocable way? Every memory of Lucas, the warmth in his gaze, the magnetism that had drawn her in, the vulnerability he occasionally revealed, collided violently with the anger boiling inside her. Could she ever trust him again? Could she even untangle the truth from the deception? The first thing she did was breathe, deeply, slowly. She reminded herself of the rules she had lived by for years. Never let emotion cloud judgment. Never allow vulnerability to be weaponized against you. And yet, even as she repeated these mantras, the pulse of longing she had tried to suppress flared in her chest. Lucas had always been a tempest she couldn't resist, a danger she couldn't ignore. She spread the will out across her desk, scanning every line with meticulous care. Each word, each clause felt like a revelation, a puzzle demanding careful assembly. The executor was Lucas Hawthorne. Her lips tightened. The sight of his name made her stomach twist. Could she confront him? Could she trust him with this? Could she even allow herself to consider that perhaps he had acted with her best interests at heart, despite everything? The memory of confrontation surged unbidden. She had stormed into his penthouse weeks ago, fury blazing in her veins. "How could you hide the truth from me?" she had demanded, voice trembling yet fierce. "All this time you knew. You knew who was behind my father's death, and you kept it from me." Lucas had looked at her then, eyes dark with remorse, jaw tight, but also with an honesty that cut through the chaos of betrayal. "Samantha, I did it to protect you," he had said, voice low but steady. You didn't need to know. I couldn't let them touch you while you were vulnerable. I had no right to drag you into it until it was safe. The memory alone made her chest ache, protecting her. He had tried to protect her even as he deceived her. It was a paradox she couldn't unravel. And yet, even in the pain, there had been moments, glimpses of the man she had once trusted, moments that had made her heart remember what it felt like to be seen, to be understood. She pressed her fingers to her temples, trying to anchor herself. The foundation of her life had been shaken repeatedly. Her father's death, the manipulations of shadowy enemies, Lucas's duplicity. It had all threatened to topple her. But she was Samantha Reed. She didn't crumble. She adapted. She survived. And now, with the will before her, she had a choice. Embrace fear and resentment, or claim power for herself. Her phone buzzed on the desk, drawing her attention. A message from an unknown number blinked on the screen. Some truths are heavier than you imagine. Meet me tonight. Piermont Park. Alone. Her breath caught. It could be Lucas. It could be one of her father's enemies. Or it could be a trap designed to exploit her curiosity. Yet a part of her, the part that had longed to understand, to confront, to reclaim agency over the past, pulled at her. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of hesitation, of human uncertainty. Her hand hovered over the screen, thumb brushing the message. She reminded herself she was in control. She made decisions. She dictated terms. No one, not Lucas, not anyone else, would corner her without her consent. But even as she considered ignoring it, even as she contemplated locking herself away and barricading her heart against any further betrayal, the name on the will called to her. Lucas Hawthorne, executor, guardian of her father's final intentions. The tension inside her coiled like a spring. To ignore it might mean losing an opportunity to uncover the truth. To engage might expose her to danger, heartbreak, or worse. She clenched her jaw, decision forming in her mind. She would go, but only on her terms, only with eyes wide open, only as the woman who had built her life from the rubble of loss and betrayal. Hours passed, the afternoon light fading to gold at the edges of her curtains. Samantha moved through her apartment methodically, setting traps, reviewing security footage, calling trusted allies under the guise of mundane business. Every instinct sharpened. She felt the weight of every choice, the gravity of stepping into a world where secrets were weapons and loyalty could be bought or destroyed. The city outside dimmed as evening fell. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting shadows against her walls, shadows that reminded her of the enemies who had lurked, waiting to strike, who had taken her father, who had sought to ruin her. And now Lucas, a man who had been both her salvation and her heartbreak, loomed at the edge of her future in ways she couldn't yet predict. She dressed with deliberation, each garment a shield, each accessory a calculated choice. Confidence wrapped around her like armor, even as her heart threatened to betray her. She carried the envelope with her father's will close to her, the fragile paper a reminder of stakes too high to gamble lightly. The taxi ride was tense, each honk and rumble of tires against asphalt echoing her heartbeat. Her eyes never strayed from the window. The city she had dominated with intellect and poise suddenly felt unpredictable, alive with the potential for danger. She reminded herself she was no longer a pawn, she was a player, and every move she made would matter. Piermont Park emerged, shadows stretching long beneath ancient trees. She scanned the paths, every figure, every movement alert. There was no fear in her legs, only a readiness forged from years of navigating chaos. She stepped onto the path, heels clicking softly against the cobblestones, each step a declaration of intent. A figure emerged from the darkness, familiar yet enigmatic, every movement precise. Lucas Hawthorne. His expression softened with recognition, eyes dark and honest in the fading light. He stopped a few paces away, hands open, in a gesture that spoke of caution, not surrender. "Lucas," she said, voice low, deliberate, commanding attention even as her heart betrayed a flicker of longing. He nodded once, eyes holding hers, acknowledging the unspoken tension between them, the history, the betrayal, the desire. "Samantha, I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted, voice tinged with vulnerability. She held the envelope closer, the weight of it grounding her. "I came for answers," she said firmly, every syllable edged with authority. "And I expect the truth, nothing less." Lucas exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and apprehension, and then paused, the gravity of her presence pressing down. "The truth, it's heavier than you know." Samantha's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of resolve. She had survived worse than secrets. She had survived betrayal, and she would survive this confrontation too. The air between them crackled with tension, desire, and the dangerous thrill of potential revelation. The night seemed to hold its breath, the shadows leaning in, as if waiting for what would come next. And then he stepped closer, just enough for her to feel the warmth, the humanity, but not close enough to breach her boundaries. "There are things you were never meant to see, things that could destroy everything you think you know about your father, about me, about us," he whispered, his voice low, raw, trembling. Samantha's jaw tightened. Her instincts screamed caution. Her heart whispered longing. Her mind raced through strategies, outcomes, and possibilities. She was the master of her own destiny. Yet in this moment, the past, the present, and the future collided violently around her. A rustle from the trees, a shadow flickering across the path, made her hand instinctively move to the envelope, to the paper that could unravel everything, or be the key to understanding. Lucas's gaze never left hers, dark and intense, burning with a silent plea for trust he had no right to demand. "You deserve the truth," he said, "but can you handle it?" Samantha swallowed hard, the world narrowing to him, the envelope and the chilling, intoxicating uncertainty of the night. She had faced death, betrayal, and manipulation. Could she face the truth he carried? The wind rustled the leaves, carrying a whisper of foreboding, a promise that nothing would ever be the same after tonight. And then, as if the universe held its breath, a soft click echoed from behind the bushes, a sound that froze Samantha in place, her heart hammering in her chest. She wasn't alone. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, tall, silent, and deliberate. Samantha instinctively stepped back, clutching the envelope like a lifeline, eyes narrowing as danger presented itself without warning. Her instincts screamed, the lessons of survival and empowerment coursing through her veins. This night, this meeting, was no longer only about Lucas or the will. It was about her life, her choices, her control, and the cost of unearthing the truth. And as the figure emerged fully into the moonlight, Samantha realized with a jolt that the past wasn't done with her yet, and neither was Lucas. Samantha's gaze locked on the figure before her, realization dawning with icy dread. Her father's killer, alive, smiling, and standing between her and the truth she had fought so hard to uncover. Samantha stared at the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she traced the elegant script of her father's will. Lucas's name was there, executing her father's legacy, holding the key to both protection and chaos. Her chest tightened. Every instinct told her to run, to reject him. Yet a voice inside whispered that perhaps she could not do this alone. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. For weeks she had clawed her way into independence, refusing to allow anyone to dictate her life. Yet here was Lucas, a man she both feared and wanted, positioned directly in the path of her future. Her drive led her to the lavish estate where Lucas had insisted they meet. The driveway stretched under the soft glow of evening lights, manicured lawns reflecting the tension in her pulse. Every step toward the front door felt like a step into uncertainty. She was armed with intelligence, strategy, and a carefully built facade of control, but the vulnerability that Lucas had always drawn out of her threatened to surface with every heartbeat. When the door opened, Lucas was there, handsome, deliberate, and impossibly composed, yet his eyes betrayed a depth of concern. "Samantha," he said softly, voice low, carrying a hint of urgency that cut through her defenses. "We need to talk. Alone." She allowed herself to enter, unwilling yet knowing she could not turn away. The estate was vast, decorated with art that spoke of heritage and wealth, each piece a reminder of legacy. But tonight, the only inheritance she cared about was the truth and the danger surrounding it. Lucas motioned toward the library, a room lined with shelves of ancient tomes and confidential documents. "I know this is hard," he admitted, "and I know trust is fragile, but we have no choice. The people behind your father's death are still active. They will stop at nothing, and if we don't work together, you'll never be safe." Samantha's lips pressed into a thin line, her mind racing. Logic warred with emotion, with the lingering ache of betrayal. She had spent months building walls, mastering control, proving she could survive without anyone. Yet here was Lucas, offering not just guidance but an unspoken truce, a dangerous alliance that promised protection, but risked the very heart she had fought to guard. Her voice was steady, controlled, even as the tension coiled between them. "Why should I believe you? After everything, how do I know this isn't another trap?" Lucas stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne pulling at memories she had tried to bury. His hand hovered briefly over a document before retracting. "Because I don't have any other choice either. And because I've spent every day since that night trying to find a way to make this right. I failed to tell you before because I was trying to protect you from the danger I couldn't yet confront. But I cannot protect you from what's coming if we don't unite." Samantha's pulse quickened, not just from his words, but from the magnetic tension simmering between them. Every glance held a question, a temptation, a warning. She knew the risk. She knew the betrayal that had cut deep. And yet, in that room, with the stakes impossibly high, there was an undeniable spark, a connection that neither logic nor past wounds could fully extinguish. They pored over files late into the night, uncovering ledgers, emails, and clandestine communications that hinted at a conspiracy rooted in greed, envy, and decades of hidden alliances. Samantha's mind sharpened with focus, calculating each move, analyzing every connection. Lucas contributed insights only he could provide, his knowledge of her father's enemies both frustrating and essential. Each night, as they worked side by side, the slow burn of desire returned, unspoken and electric. Their hands brushed while passing documents, their eyes met across the table, holding more than strategy in their gaze. Neither spoke, but the tension was a language in itself, a dangerous dance of need, mistrust, and longing. Samantha reminded herself to remain vigilant. She would not allow history to repeat itself. She would not surrender to the warmth that Lucas exuded, to the memories that haunted her, to the moments where control threatened to slip. Yet, when he leaned close to examine a file, the faint brush of his breath against her ear made her pulse stutter, a warning she could not ignore. They traveled together, meeting with lawyers, bankers, and allies loyal to her father's legacy. Every negotiation was a test, not only of intellect and influence, but of restraint. Lucas's charm and presence were weapons as lethal as any financial strategy, and Samantha, hardened and shrewd, countered every subtle maneuver, asserting herself with a confidence she had cultivated through pain and perseverance. At night, the estate's lights dimmed, and they would continue reviewing evidence, the quiet interrupted only by the distant hum of the city below. Samantha would catch glimpses of him, his expression thoughtful, his focus unwavering, and feel a pulse of emotions she refused to name. Trust remained tentative, yet necessity demanded proximity, and proximity nurtured the embers of temptation. Lucas's apologies came quietly, sincere, and loaded with remorse. "I never wanted to betray you," he murmured once, voice raw, almost breaking. "I only wanted to keep you alive, to give you a chance to fight back against those who would destroy you." Samantha's response was measured, yet her chest tightened. "You hid the truth," she said, words deliberate, cutting. "I won't forget that. But right now, I need you, not for anything else, not for forgiveness, but because together we stand a chance." Days blurred into nights as their alliance solidified, fragile but effective. They uncovered hidden accounts, intercepted communications, and identified the web of enemies threatening her inheritance. Every revelation added layers of danger, yet every discovery also rekindled their unspoken connection, the tension rising like an uncontainable flame. And then came the day of the crucial meeting, a gathering with family members and corporate rivals who had long coveted her father's wealth. The room was opulent, the air thick with ambition and resentment. Samantha's pulse raced, her mind cataloging every face, every potential threat. Lucas remained close, eyes sharp, body poised like a shield she could lean on if necessary. The meeting began with polite exchanges, forced smiles, and the subtle undercurrent of threat. Samantha presented her proposals, backed by evidence she and Lucas had meticulously gathered. Every objection from the opposition was countered with precision, her confidence a sword as sharp as any blade. Lucas's presence beside her was silent support, strength she could feel without words. And just as she was about to secure a critical agreement that would fortify her position, a security alarm shrieked, slicing through the polished air. Panic rippled through the room. The murmurs of wealthy enemies turned to screams of confusion. Lucas reacted instantly, grabbing Samantha's hand and pulling her toward a secure room he had arranged in advance. The sound of the building's infrastructure groaning under stress, the faint scent of smoke, and the trembling of the walls reached them as they entered the room. Samantha's heart thundered in her chest, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Lucas held the door, his jaw tight, eyes scanning every corner, muscles coiled and ready. And then the explosion tore through the city. Glass shattered, walls vibrated, and a shockwave rattled the estate. The secure room held, but the world outside had changed in an instant. Samantha clutched Lucas, the weight of fear and attraction mingling in a cocktail too intense to untangle. Their breathing was ragged, their hands entwined, and for a fleeting moment, the professional alliance, the simmering desire, and the unspoken trust collided into a single, overwhelming realization. They were in this together, and nothing would ever be the same again. The room was silent except for the distant echoes of chaos. Samantha's mind raced, adrenaline giving way to the sobering awareness that the battle for her life and inheritance was only beginning. Every secret she uncovered, every ally gained, every enemy revealed, had led to this moment of sheer unpredictability. Lucas's gaze met hers, dark and intense, as though the explosion had cleared the air between them, leaving only raw truth. "We survived this," he said, voice firm yet shaken. "And then we finish what we started." Samantha nodded, heart still pounding, chest heaving. Trust was fragile, danger was imminent, and desire simmered under the surface. But she knew one thing with certainty. She would not face this alone. Outside the walls of their fragile sanctuary, the city smoldered, sirens wailing, smoke rising like a dark cloud over the horizon. And Samantha realized that the game had changed. Her every decision, every step, every emotion now carried more weight than ever before. She pressed herself against the wall, hands gripping the edge of the sturdy table, watching Lucas silently prepare for what would come next. Her thoughts flickered to the will, to her father, to the enemies closing in, and to the dangerous bond forming between them. It was a delicate, dangerous alliance, one built on necessity, tension, and unspoken desire. One misstep could cost everything. And yet, she felt a strange, terrifying comfort in knowing they faced it together. For the first time in weeks, Samantha allowed herself to breathe, not fully, not safely, but enough to realize that survival was no longer just a personal fight. It was a shared mission, one where trust and temptation intertwined like a double-edged sword. Her mind catalogued every possible escape route, every hidden danger, and every potential ally. Yet beneath the strategy, a single, undeniable truth throbbed with every heartbeat. Lucas Hawthorne remained the most dangerous and intoxicating part of her world. And in that tense silence, as the room trembled from the aftershocks of the explosion, Samantha felt the fragile seeds of something neither of them could deny taking root. The alliance was solidifying, but the fire surrounding them had only just begun. And outside, the city waited, trembling under the shadow of an unknown threat, ready to test the limits of their trust and the strength of their hearts. Smoke and debris settled in the streets outside the estate as the explosion's impact echoed across the city, and Samantha realized with horror that someone had orchestrated the blast, and it had her name written all over it. The acrid smoke lingered in the air, curling into the corners of the room like some living thing, as Samantha blinked through the haze. Her pulse still raced from the explosion, her fingers trembling where Lucas held them tightly in the secure room. The floor beneath them had shuddered, glass shattered somewhere nearby, and the smell of burnt metal and ozone filled her nostrils. For a heartbeat, everything felt suspended, the city outside indifferent to the chaos inside. Lucas's chest rose and fell rapidly, and his dark eyes met hers with a mixture of relief and unspoken fear. We made it," he murmured, voice low, almost a whisper, as if saying the words too loudly might shatter the fragile moment. Samantha wanted to pull away, to stand tall and unshaken as she always had, but the closeness, the undeniable presence of someone who had risked everything for her, grounded her in a way that surprised her. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yes, we did," she said, voice steady, though internally her chest was still pounding. The adrenaline refused to fade entirely, leaving her senses sharp, her mind alert, every nerve humming with survival instinct. Around them, the secure room felt impossibly small, cocoon-like, shielding them from the destruction outside. And yet, the danger hadn't passed. It had merely shifted. Lucas released her hands slowly, and she caught the subtle tremor in his fingers, the echo of fear that belied his usually impenetrable composure. "You were incredible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You stayed calm, focused. I couldn't have—" He stopped abruptly, shaking his head as if trying. Alex's voice softened but carried urgency. "Chloe, we have to be ready. Whoever did this, they're not finished." Her hand shook as she gripped the photo tighter. The twins stirred, small cries breaking the silence. She looked down at them, panic and love colliding in her chest. Her past, her present, and the threat looming ahead converged in that moment. She took a shaky step toward the door, glancing back at Alex, eyes wide. Her mind raced. "I can't stay, I can't trust. I can't protect them if I stay." The note burned in her hand. The familiar handwriting haunted her like a ghost she had once embraced, now twisted into a threat. Every memory of love, every wound, every betrayal she had endured, now pressed against her in sharp, piercing clarity. Chloe turns the photo over and gasps. The handwriting belongs to someone she once loved. Her breath catches. "No, it can't be him," she whispers, fear and disbelief shaking her voice. Chloe's hand shook as she stared at the photograph, the note's ink still fresh in her mind. Her chest felt tight as though the room itself was pressing down on her, recognition struck her with the force of a hammer. The handwriting, the curve of the letters, the way each loop tilted, was unmistakable. Mara, her sister. Mara, whom she had not spoken to in over a year, whose absence had been a wound she tried to ignore. Her mind raced through every memory, the fights, the whispered betrayals, the last night they had shared before silence fell between them. And now this. Mara was here, reaching into her life again, and the threat was unmistakable. Alex's presence loomed behind her, steady, solid, a stark contrast to the whirlwind in her mind. He had been silent until now, his hands resting on the kitchen counter, jaw tight, eyes assessing, calculating. "I didn't know about this," he said finally, voice low but firm. "I have no idea what Mara is accusing me of, Chloe. I swear." Chloe turned slowly, uncertainty etched on her face. The pain of the betrayal she had survived before, the hospital, the twins, everything, was colliding with the new reality. Then why now? Why her? Why this? Her voice trembled, a mixture of fear and anger. Alex shook his head. "I don't know, but I promise you I haven't done anything she claims, whatever she's planning. It isn't what it seems. I won't let her hurt you. I won't let her hurt the boys." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "How can I trust you?" The words weren't just a question. They were a challenge, a desperate plea for assurance she wasn't sure she could ever receive again. He stepped closer, voice steady but urgent. "Because right now my only focus is protecting you and them. That's all that matters." The room felt heavy, charged with tension. The twins stirred softly in their bassinets, their tiny bodies moving slightly as if sensing the weight of the conflict surrounding them. Chloe's gaze fell to them, and her heart ached with both love and fear. Night descended, bringing with it a darkness that made every shadow seem alive. Chloe could feel it pressing against the walls, creeping along the floor, whispering warnings she did not yet understand. The house, which had seemed so safe, now felt small, confining, a cage where danger could hide in every corner. The first cries from the twins shattered the silence. Alex was instantly at their side, lifting them gently, murmuring calming words as he checked their breathing. His hands were steady, movements precise, every gesture a testament to the nights he had spent, learning, caring, making up for the moments he had missed. Chloe watched, heart pounding, torn between gratitude and a gnawing fear she could not push away. She had wanted to trust him. She had wanted to believe that his promises were enough. But now, with Mara's handwriting etched into her reality, trust felt like a fragile bridge stretched across a stormy sea. Suddenly, one of the monitors began to beep sharply. Alex's eyes snapped toward it, a flash of panic cutting across his usually controlled face. Both twins had developed irregular breathing patterns. "Alex," Chloe whispered, voice tight with fear. "We need to go." "Now," he said, scooping the twins into his arms. The urgency in his tone left no room for argument. Chloe followed, grabbing her coat and moving as fast as she could, her mind spinning with worry. The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights, honking horns, and Alex's controlled panic. He spoke little, only murmuring to the twins, soothing them, whispering apologies, promises, encouragements. Chloe's hands were clenched tightly in her lap, knuckles white as she tried to control her own panic, loyalty, and to measure her own strength. The slow, deliberate rebuilding of power became a dance, a meticulous choreography of strategy, trust, and the quiet acknowledgement that neither could fully succeed alone. Amid the chaos, Lucas revealed glimpses of his true self, vulnerable, steadfast, willing to subordinate ego to loyalty and love. Samantha observed him carefully, her heart conflicted between wariness and longing. She had been hurt before, she had been betrayed. But now, faced with the man who had risked everything to protect her, she understood that true strength often required opening oneself to trust. Weeks passed. The immediate threat faded, replaced by the realization that their enemies had only been delayed, not defeated. Samantha doubled down, reorganizing family assets, reinforcing security measures, and strategically undermining rival factions. Each victory, each small triumph, fed her determination and her sense of empowerment. Lucas remained her constant, an anchor amid the storm. His presence was both comforting and maddening, a reminder that love could exist amid chaos, but only if she controlled the terms. Every gesture, every moment of tenderness was measured, deliberate, yet impossible to ignore. One evening, as the city lights flickered below their penthouse, Samantha's phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, and a chill ran down her spine. She answered cautiously. "Samantha Reed," a voice whispered, smooth, icy, deliberate. "Your struggle is far from over. The family feud you thought concluded has only just begun, and someone very close to you is working against you." The words hit like a knife, sending shivers through her spine, twisting her stomach into knots. She gripped the edge of the balcony, staring out at the city that had already witnessed too much destruction. Lucas appeared beside her, sensing the shift immediately, dark eyes questioning. Samantha swallowed hard, her mind racing. Someone close to her, a betrayal yet to be revealed. And the war, she realized, was far from over. The slow burn of tension tightened around her chest, the echo of danger lingering in every heartbeat. She had survived explosions, enemies, and betrayal. But now, the real threat was hidden in plain sight, closer than she could have imagined. Her pulse thudded as she whispered to herself, steadying her breath. "So it begins again." Samantha clenched her phone, staring into the night, as the caller's voice left a single chilling message. "You'll never see it coming, not from someone you trust." The call from her mother lingered in Samantha's mind like a shadow that refused to lift. She had expected excuses, feigned concern, maybe even tears. But what she heard instead was a confession wrapped in bitterness and regret, exposing betrayals she had never imagined. Her mother, the woman who had nurtured her, had been complicit in a web of deception, hiding truths that could shatter everything Samantha had rebuilt. Samantha's heart pounded, not from fear alone, but from the raw ache of disappointment. The woman who had given her life had also endangered it. Every memory of childhood warmth twisted with suspicion now, every shared secret now tinged with the possibility of manipulation. She clenched her fists, nails digging into palms, trying to steady herself. Lucas watched her closely, silent, his presence a steady anchor against the storm raging inside her. "You knew all along." Samantha's voice trembled, controlled yet sharp, cutting through the silence that had fallen over the room. Her eyes, sharp as knives, bore into her mother's. "You let him, let them, play their games, and you never warned me." Her mother flinched, eyes watering, guilt etched into every line on her face. "Samantha, I thought I was protecting you. I made choices I thought were for your safety. I never wanted you to be hurt." "Safety?" Samantha's laugh was hollow, bitter. "You call letting betrayal fester for years, letting enemies lie in wait for me, safety? You made me fight battles I didn't even know existed." Her voice rose, then dropped, raw and vulnerable. The weight of suppressed anger and sorrow pressed down on her chest, threatening to crush her composure. Lucas stepped closer, his hand brushing hers in a gesture of reassurance, grounding her. She felt the slow warmth of his touch, the familiar surge of desire intertwined with comfort, a tether to reality. "Samantha," he murmured, soft and steady, "we face this together. You don't have to do it alone." For a moment she let herself lean on him, allowing the emotional walls she had built over years to tremble. Fear, pain, and longing bled together, raw and unfiltered. She hated the vulnerability, hated that she needed him, Yet she couldn't deny the truth. He had become her strength. He had never once wavered, never faltered in his support, even when her fury burned at him like wildfire. The conversation with her mother continued, each revelation heavier than the last. Family secrets, hidden alliances, financial manipulations, all pieces of a puzzle that had been stacked against her. Every victory she had achieved now seemed both triumphant and precarious, as if one misstep could unravel everything she had fought for. Lucas remained close, silent but vigilant. His presence alone reminded Samantha that she had allies, that her fight was no longer solitary. Yet even in this fragile alliance, doubt lingered. Could she truly trust anyone from her past? Could she allow her heart to open without fear of betrayal? The slow burn of their connection simmered, each glance and touch loaded with unspoken tension, the potential for something deeper. Night fell, draping the city in shadows as they pored over evidence, piecing together who had betrayed her and why. Samantha's mind raced with possibilities, with strategy, with the meticulous plans that had kept her alive and in control for so long. Yet beneath the surface, another current ran, her growing need for Lucas, the emotional intimacy they shared in quiet moments, the confessions of fear and hurt that were too heavy for words alone. As they reviewed documents, Lucas's hand brushed hers again, a subtle contact that sent a shiver through her. She met his gaze, eyes locking, and for a heartbeat the world narrowed to just the two of them. The danger, the betrayal, everything else fading into the background. "I trust you," she whispered, not entirely confident, but enough to bridge the gap. Lucas's lips curved in a soft, knowing smile, a mixture of relief and longing. "I'll never give you a reason not to," he said, voice low, steady, carrying a promise that felt heavier than any words she had ever heard. The room seemed to shrink, the chaos outside irrelevant, leaving only the slow-building tension and the warmth of shared vulnerability. Hours blurred into one another. They spoke of dreams, of past fears, of things they had never admitted aloud. Each confession tightened the bond between them, a fragile thread spun from both pain and desire. Samantha found herself leaning on him in ways she hadn't allowed herself before. The walls she had built began to crumble, brick by brick, as she realized that love, trust, and vulnerability were not weaknesses. They were weapons, if wielded with care. Yet the city never slept, and neither did danger. Samantha's mind never rested. Every call, every movement, every shadow passing by her window was a reminder that the enemy was still out there, watching, waiting. The stakes were higher than ever, and she knew that any moment could tip the balance. Any misstep could be fatal. The slow tension between her and Lucas simmered beneath the surface of their strategic planning, a mix of desire, fear, and unspoken emotion. Moments of intimacy, a brush of hands, a shared glance, a whispered word, stirred feelings that Samantha both resisted and longed for. She feared giving in too soon, feared that vulnerability could be exploited. Yet, in the quiet of shared fear and triumph, the lines between partnership and passion blurred. As the night deepened, Samantha prepared to leave the office, gathering files and devices that contained the fragile threads of her empire. Lucas walked beside her, alert, protective, the unspoken promise of safety clear in every step. The city lights blurred past, casting long shadows, and Samantha's pulse quickened with the awareness of danger. They arrived at the gala she had been attending earlier that week, a glamorous event meant to solidify alliances and project strength. She felt exposed, every luxurious hallway and polished floor a potential threat. Her mother's revelations weighed on her, Lucas's steady presence a lifeline. She had built a world where control equaled survival, but tonight survival required vigilance beyond the familiar strategies. As she exited the venue later, alone in the sleek black car awaiting her, a sense of unease prickled her spine. The city's hum felt distant, replaced by the rapid beat of her heart. She sensed eyes on her, felt the presence of someone closing in. The invisible threat she had always known lurked in the background. The driver signaled her to step in, and Samantha obeyed, clutching her evening bag close. Lucas had insisted on being nearby, but she insisted she could handle the short ride. Yet instinct screamed otherwise, the lingering tension of betrayal and danger coiling in her chest like a predator. Halfway through the quiet streets, headlights flashed, and a sharp impact rocked the car. Samantha's vision blurred, consciousness flickering as she realized she had been ambushed. The world tilted violently, flames licking the edges of her awareness, the scent of smoke choking the air. Panic surged, instinct rising to the surface, and she felt herself losing control. Her last thought before the darkness swallowed her was Lucas. His name a lifeline, a promise, a hope she clung to even as the world collapsed around her. Samantha awakens in a haze of smoke and pain, trapped in a car rapidly filling with flames. Lucas's voice screaming her name outside, desperate and terrified as the inferno threatens to consume everything. The acrid scent of smoke still lingered in Samantha's hair, mingling with the residual adrenaline that clung to her like a second skin. She sat on the marble floor of her office, knees drawn to her chest, every muscle trembling from fear and exhaustion. Lucas knelt beside her, hands firm on her shoulders, grounding her as though sheer presence could anchor her heart back into normal rhythm. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice steady, resolute. The intensity in his gaze left no room for doubt. He would not let anything harm her, not now, not ever. Samantha's pulse, once racing uncontrollably, began to sync with his calm strength, a rhythm born of shared survival. Her mind replayed the attack over and over, the blinding headlights of the car, the sudden jerk into the side street, the merciless flames racing toward her. Every second stretched into an eternity, and every heartbeat felt like a declaration. Life was fragile, and trust was rarer than diamonds. And yet, here he was, Lucas Hawthorne, standing unwaveringly, offering her the one thing she had not dared to accept fully until now: certainty. Samantha's chest heaved as she finally let herself exhale. For years she had built walls strong enough to withstand betrayal, manipulation, and grief. Walls that protected her from love, from pain, from risk. But the brush with death had shattered more than just her physical safety. It had cracked the barriers around her heart. She realized, with a clarity both terrifying and exhilarating, that she could trust him, that she wanted to. Lucas shifted closer, brushing a strand of charred hair from her face. His touch was deliberate, tender, as if handling something precious and fragile. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," he said softly. The words, simple as they were, carried the weight of years of unspoken emotions, guilt, longing, fear, and love intertwined in a single breath. Samantha closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his hand and the sincerity of his gaze wash over her. Her defenses, long hardened, began to crumble, brick by brick. She felt the tension in her body dissolve just enough to lean into him, to let the vulnerability she had buried for so long rise to the surface. "I've been running," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Running from fear, from loss, from you." Her eyes met his, searching for judgment, for rejection, for disappointment, but found only understanding. He nodded, acknowledging the truth in her confession without a word, allowing her to release years of restraint in that single fragile moment. Their closeness sparked a quiet fire, slow and deliberate, the kind that doesn't consume recklessly but builds steadily, warming the edges of the soul. Lucas's lips brushed her temple, then lingered near her cheek, and Samantha, heart hammering, let herself lean into the sensation. A kiss, gentle, urgent, yet restrained, sealed the unspoken promise between them. a promise of love, protection, and partnership forged in fire and survival. In the days that followed, their connection deepened, evolving beyond desire into a bond tempered by respect, trust, and shared struggle. They faced the remaining pieces of the conspiracy together, moving like a synchronized force, each step planned with precision, each decision a blend of intellect and instinct. Samantha's strategic mind, combined with Lucas's insights, created an unstoppable force against those who had sought to destroy her. They confronted old enemies with a balance of calculated assertiveness and unyielding courage, exposing lies, reclaiming assets, and dismantling schemes that had taken years to construct. Samantha, once isolated and wary, realized she was stronger, not despite Lucas, but because of their partnership. She could be fierce, independent, and still allow herself to lean on someone she trusted implicitly. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and revelations, they stood together on the balcony of her office, overlooking the city lights that shimmered like stars caught in the web of streets. The world felt vast and chaotic, yet, in that moment, the chaos seemed manageable, conquerable, because they faced it together. Lucas's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing naturally. "We've come a long way," he said, voice low but steady. "And we're not done yet." His eyes held hers, unwavering, conveying both certainty and a shared resolve. Samantha squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of their journey. The battles fought, the hearts broken and healed, the love earned through trial and patience. Samantha felt a profound sense of clarity and empowerment settle over her. She was no longer the woman haunted by betrayal or controlled by fear. She was a leader, a survivor, a woman who could command both power and love without compromise. And in Lucas, she had found not a rescuer, but a partner, someone whose strength complemented hers, whose presence amplified her courage rather than diminished it. Late into the night, as the office quieted and the city hummed below, they reflected on their victories. Each win was hard-earned, each truth uncovered a testament to resilience. Samantha realized that the greatest triumph wasn't in reclaiming her inheritance or exposing the enemies. It was in reclaiming herself, her capacity to trust, to love, and to thrive without fear. And yet, even in this fragile peace, the world retained its shadows. Threats, subtle and insidious, lingered just beyond the glow of victory. Samantha had learned the hard truth. No battle was ever truly over. No victory absolute. There would always be those who coveted power, who thrived on deceit, who would not rest while she rose. But now she understood something crucial. She was no longer alone, and she was no longer defenseless. Together, she and Lucas plotted the final moves, the dismantling of every lingering threat. Each strategy, each alliance was executed with precision, an orchestra of calculated risks and decisive action. Samantha marveled at the transformation within herself. Fear had evolved into determination, anger into clarity, independence into a shared strength that neither of them could have achieved alone. And yet, in the quiet moments between plans, between confrontations and victories, they allowed themselves to exist as something more than warriors. They allowed fleeting touches, whispered confessions, and tentative laughter. The slow burn of their connection became the heartbeat of their triumph, a living testament to resilience and love nurtured through adversity. Samantha realized that the power she had sought all along was never in money, revenge, or control. It was in the freedom to choose, the ability to protect those she loved, and the courage to open her heart without fear. Lucas had been the catalyst, but the strength had always been within her, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Days passed in a rhythm of shared purpose, each victory bringing a sense of completion, each challenge met with unwavering resolve. They confronted old foes one last time, exposing the truth behind manipulations and threats that had haunted Samantha's life. Each revelation was a step toward closure, a reclamation of the life that had been threatened for too long. As the sun set over the city, painting the skyline in hues of gold and crimson, Samantha felt the weight of the past begin to lift. The battles, the betrayals, the near-death moments. They had forged her into someone unbreakable, someone capable of loving fully and fiercely. She looked at Lucas, eyes glistening, and saw reflected there not just desire, but mutual respect, trust, and a shared triumph over adversity. Their journey had been anything but simple, fraught with danger, deception, and heartbreak, but it had led them here, to this fragile, hard-won peace. And for the first time, Samantha allowed herself to believe that the future could be theirs to define, that love could exist without fear, and that power could coexist with vulnerability. But as they celebrated, sharing a quiet, intimate moment of victory, the city around them calm and unaware, a shadow lingered beyond the window, a figure whose presence promised that the story was far from finished. The phone on Samantha's desk buzzed insistently. She picked it up, expecting perhaps another routine message, but froze as she read the words. "You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over." Her hand trembled slightly, heart pounding, not with fear of the past, but with the awareness that even now the shadows of danger and betrayal had not fully receded. The world was quiet, but the warning was loud, and Samantha knew, deep down, that the final reckoning had yet to come. Samantha reads the threatening message and realizes the war is far from over, a shadowy figure watching her from afar, their intentions unknown. Samantha stood in her office, the city lights below shimmering like a constellation of possibilities. The threats that had once haunted her, the enemies who had tried to manipulate her, the betrayals that had cut her to the core, they were all within her reach now. Not for vengeance, but for resolution. She had learned the language of power, the rhythm of strategy, and the art of anticipating the moves of those who thought they could control her life. Lucas was beside her, leaning casually against the desk, his presence steady and reassuring. He was no longer a shadow in her life, nor a figure of uncertainty. He was an equal in every sense, a partner who had earned her trust and proved his loyalty time and again. She let her gaze drift to Arya, who slept in the nursery, her soft breaths a reminder of everything Samantha had fought for. The little girl's life had been the catalyst for Samantha's transformation, from vulnerability to strength, from fear to mastery, from isolation to partnership. Lucas watched her with quiet admiration, reading the subtle shifts in her expression, knowing that every victory was not just a conquest over external enemies, but a triumph over Samantha's own lingering doubts and pain. The final confrontation with their remaining adversaries had been calculated meticulously. Samantha had uncovered the last of the manipulations, exposed the hidden alliances, and dismantled the schemes that had threatened her family's fortune and her peace of mind. Each step had been deliberate, measured, and executed with precision. Lucas had stood by her side, providing counsel, insight, and unwavering support. Their teamwork was seamless, trust forged in fire, respect tempered by trials, and a bond strengthened through shared vulnerability. When the dust had settled, Samantha felt an unfamiliar calm. She walked through her office, touching the shelves, the framed photographs, the awards and recognitions, all symbols of a life reclaimed. There was no arrogance in her movements, no need to assert dominance. This was not about proving herself to anyone but herself. Every decision she had made, every risk she had taken, every boundary she had enforced, had led to this, a life she could define on her own terms. Lucas stepped forward, his hand brushing hers, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. They had endured storms together, danger, betrayal, near-death experiences, and yet, here they were. There was no rush to speak, No need to fill the silence with empty reassurances. The quiet between them was comfortable, full of unspoken understanding, and laden with the weight of shared experience. "I never imagined it would end like this," Lucas murmured, voice low, almost reverent. "That we'd survive all of it, and still have each other." Samantha's eyes softened, the hardness that had guarded her heart for years giving way to warmth. "We survived because we chose each other, not because we had to. And now, we get to decide what comes next." Their reunion was not a fairy tale of perfection. There were no promises of effortless happiness, no illusions that life would be free of challenges. Instead, there was clarity, mutual respect, and the acknowledgement of past mistakes without letting them define the future. Lucas had learned humility, patience, and the value of being present, not just as a lover or protector, but as a true partner. Samantha had learned trust, forgiveness, and the power of embracing vulnerability without surrendering her autonomy. Together, they reviewed the final steps to secure Samantha's inheritance, ensuring that no hidden clause, no rogue player, could threaten their future. Every signature, every contract, every strategic move was executed under Samantha's watchful eye, with Lucas's guidance and partnership. They celebrated victories quietly, without fanfare, knowing that the most meaningful triumphs were those that ensured safety, stability, and dignity. Late in the evening, Samantha carried Arya to the living room. The city skyline glittered beyond the windows, a vast expanse that mirrored the boundless possibilities of their future. Arya's small hand clutched Samantha's necklace, eyes wide with curiosity and trust. Lucas knelt beside them, smiling softly, his presence grounding them both. "You've earned this," Lucas said, voice gentle, as he brushed a strand of hair from Samantha's face. "This life, this peace, it's yours and ours." Samantha inhaled deeply, letting the words sink in. She felt the culmination of years of struggle, of heartbreak, of fear, and of relentless perseverance. The love she shared with Lucas was not a surrender, but a choice, a deliberate, conscious decision to embrace partnership while maintaining her sovereignty. They spent the evening simply together, Aria laughing as Lucas made silly faces, Samantha watching with a contented smile, the tension of the past finally dissipating. Each small moment, Aria's giggle, the warmth of Lucas's hand on hers, the soft glow of the city lights, was a reminder that love, resilience, and empowerment could coexist, that a woman could hold power, nurture life, and still allow herself to love without fear. As the night deepened, Samantha stood at the window, Arya sleeping soundly in her arms, Lucas behind her, fingers entwined with hers. She gazed out at the skyline, the city that had witnessed her trials and triumphs. The wind carried a quiet promise of freedom, of new beginnings, and of life reclaimed. The past no longer had a hold on them. Every betrayal, every threat, every obstacle had been met with strategy, courage, and heart. They had chosen love on their own terms, established boundaries, and forged a family defined by choice rather than circumstance. Samantha whispered softly, mostly to herself, mostly as a vow, mostly as an acknowledgement of the journey. "This is ours, this life, this love, this future." Lucas leaned closer, his voice barely audible over the quiet hum of the city. "The past can't touch us anymore. This is ours." And Samantha, holding Arya close, feeling the warmth of her daughter's breath, the steady presence of Lucas, and the certainty of her own strength, smiled through tears. Free, empowered, and triumphant. She had survived, she had fought, and she had finally won. The city lights shimmered like stars, reflecting off the glass of the skyline. Samantha's heart was full, her choices clear, and her life reclaimed. She knew challenges would come again, as they always did, But for the first time, she embraced the truth that she could meet them on her own terms, with love, courage, and unwavering resolve. The story closed on a quiet note of victory. No illusions, no fantasy, only the reality of a woman who had risen from the ashes, a love forged through trials, and a future defined by her own hands. Samantha looks out at the city skyline, Arya in her arms, Lucas by her side, whispering, "The past can't touch us anymore. This is ours." She smiles, tears in her eyes, finally free, and the story ends on a satisfying note of triumph, love, and empowerment.